Do you want to win your very own mushroom foraging knife? To celebrate this brand new episode on mushroom foraging in Virginia, I'm giving away a mushroom knife that's perfect for your next adventure in the woods. Here's how to enter. Listen to the new episode. Share it with your friends on social media by tapping the share button in your listening app. Tag Virginia Outdoor Adventures so I know you've entered. It's that simple. One lucky listener will win a mushroom foraging knife to take along on your next wild food hunt. Giveaway ends on October 14th. From the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia is a mecca for outdoor travel and adventure. Virginia Outdoor Adventures podcast is your local guide for hiking, camping, kayaking, travel, and so much more. Get the information and the inspiration to plan your own adventure right here in Virginia. I'm your host, Jessica Bowser. Virginia's forests are alive with hidden treasures, and they taste delicious. From morels to chicken of the woods, Virginia is a forager's dream. Dive into the fascinating world of mushroom foraging with Gabrielle Cerberville, better known online as the Chaotic Forager. Gabrielle is a foraging educator, community mycologist, and the author of her debut book, Gathered, on foraging, feasting, and the seasonal life. You'll learn where and when to find wild mushrooms in Virginia, how to get started safely, the rules and ethics of foraging on public lands, and why sustainability and ecological awareness matter for every forager. Gabrielle guides us through Virginia's seasonal bounty, from fall's magnificent hen-of-the-woods mushrooms and giant puffballs to winter's resilient oyster mushrooms, spring's elusive morels, and summer's golden chanterelles that carpet the forest floor. Ready to explore Virginia's wild foods? Grab your basket, a mushroom foraging knife, and your appetite for connecting with the landscape. Let's go. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is sponsored by Breaks Park and Heart of Appalachia. Known as the Grand Canyon of the South, Breaks Park is a hiking destination in the heart of Appalachia. You'll find trails for every skill level, featuring geologic wonders, canyon overlooks, stream crossings, and abundant wildlife. Stay close to the adventure with lodges, cabins, and campgrounds inside the park. Beyond the breaks, the Heart of Appalachia invites you to hike and bike through breathtaking mountain landscapes, paddle hidden hollows, reel in trout from crystal clear streams, or hop on an ATV to conquer the rugged spearhead trails. Take a scenic drive, embark on an elk tour, and explore Virginia's treasured Southwest, where you'll also find vibrant local dining, shopping, and celebrations. Your next outdoor adventure starts in the heart of Appalachia. Tap the links for Breaks Park and Heart of Appalachia in your show notes. Gabrielle, welcome to Virginia Outdoor Adventures.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
What do you love about Virginia's outdoors?
Appalachian ecosystems are just so extremely biodiverse. There are so many things that exist in Virginia at large, but you get so many different things with Virginia, not even just Appalachian ecosystems, but like you get the coast, you get everything. I love as a forager that I can just like go up the mountain if I miss a season down in the valley, that like you can travel 10 minutes in any direction and you're somewhere completely different.
And you have lived in many other states. So to hear that you appreciate that about Virginia, I love that, because the landscape here has a little bit of everything. And I love to hear that somebody who hasn't experienced that everywhere appreciates it here.
I really do. Yeah. I lived in Indiana for a long time, and Indiana is beautiful, but it is pretty flat. And being able to come back to the East Coast and experience mountains and just diversity of landscape again, and diversity of terrain it's so nice. It's coming home.
Now, you're originally from Pennsylvania, right?
Yes. Yep.
And how did you first get started with mushroom foraging? Like, what drew you to wild foods in general?
Those are actually kind of two different answers. So when it comes to wild foods in general, I grew up right in front of a swamp. I lived in the mountains. My family is still in the Pocono Mountains out in Pennsylvania. And because we lived in a swamp with all of this acidic soil, we had blueberries everywhere. So blueberries were like my intro into wild food. And I'm 33. I don't know if you remember what blueberries tasted like when we were kids, like grocery store blueberries. They were bad. They were like
That's right.
so mealy. They didn't taste like anything. I thought that I didn't like blueberries. And then I tasted a wild blueberry. And I think that set me up to assume that wild food tastes better than grocery store food. And most of the time, that is true. But when it comes to mushrooms, I didn't get into mushrooms until I was about 25 years old. When I was living in Indiana, actually, I found a mushroom when I was out on a trail run and just got really curious about what it was. I'd never really thought that much about mushrooms before then, but the whole process of identifying it really just started me out on this mushroom journey. And, since then, it's just become an obsession.
I think that's kind of how it starts for all of us is we see something and we're like, that looks really cool, or that's really strange, or what is that? And then we sort of get sucked in, right? Like we start to do a little bit of research. We find some groups maybe of people who are identifying mushrooms or sharing their love for mushrooms. And then all of a sudden it opens you up to this whole new world, right?
You have to put yourself in that place where you're a little bit of a kid again and you ask a question because you don't know the answer to something. You have to accept the fact that you don't know the answer and live in the curiosity for a little while. It's something kids are really good at and that adults are not as good at. So it's something I have to retrain my brain to do really often. Like, hey, without ego, I don't know this. I don't know this organism. I haven't introduced myself to this friend yet. Let's learn something. And that's like the best thing about the forest. You get to go out and you get to learn something every single time.
Right. And I love that you refer to them as friends because I typically do that when I'm looking at birds or if I come across other wildlife, like maybe a snake or a salamander or a frog. But you refer to everything as a friend, like the plants, the trees, the mushrooms, all the things.
Yeah, I mean that's how I see them. They're beings, even though they don't experience the world in the same way that a human does. Like there is personhood there, right?
I agree with that. And I think when you shift your mind to start to think about the outdoors in that way, it creates a whole new meaning. Like you're not just somebody passing through anymore, but you're part of a community in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you go by Chaotic Forager on your popular social media accounts. I'm curious what the story is behind the name.
So what's funny is when I started my TikTok account, which my friend kind of bullied me into joining because she kept sending me videos and I couldn't watch them because I wasn't on TikTok. So she really just wanted to spam me with content and was just like, get an account. So I just came up with a name. I have 2 cats, so I went with Chaotic Cat Lady because I've always just got like a million things going on. I always have a million hobbies. My office is like a disaster of creative explosions. So I went with Chaotic Cat Lady. And then as I started actually making content, I realized that I needed to have a username that more accurately reflected the content I was making. So I kept the chaotic and switched the cat lady to Forager.
I love it. And I should have known you were a cat lady. Like usually we can identify each other pretty quickly.
Yep, it's true. Yeah, there's a cat energy that people have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a badass energy, if you ask me.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, the attitude and everything. I love it. So what keeps you passionate about teaching others how to forage? Because I would imagine when you open yourself up on social media, you're also opening yourself up to all the negativity and the crazy and the people who come out of the woodwork saying all kinds of things. And I don't experience too much of that, luckily myself, but I see it happening with others. And I just wonder, like, what makes you decide to keep putting out educational content amidst all of that negativity?
When you choose to teach, what you're going to find is that it makes you a better learner. So one of the most effective ways to learn something is to try to find a way to teach it, which feels really backwards. It's something that I didn't really understand until I got into teaching in academia, because I work at UVA and I teach courses there. And sometimes you have to internalize things differently when you want to share them with others. I kind of feel like I have the best job in the world because my job is to info dump about my special interests to people who actually want to listen. But you're right. There are people on the internet who are not there to listen. They're just there to be mean. They're there to be jerks. And I try to take people at face value, but I also try to assume good intent whenever I can. So if somebody says something that feels a little cruddy, I try to do my best to find the opportunity to educate within that. So if somebody says something about like my hair, because it's always just like some physical feature that they've chosen to focus on, or some way that I say something, but then like also mentions the mushroom that I'm talking about, I'm going to ignore what they said about how I look, and I'm going to instead focus on responding to the question that might be hiding inside the mean comment. Because comments and like public facing things like that are going to be read by other people. And so it's an opportunity to not only educate this person who may not be responding in good faith, but to educate people who are scrolling through comments and trying to get more nuance, get more information.
And on the other end of the spectrum, I imagine it's also an opportunity for you to build community in a positive way. So we touched on this a little bit, but how does foraging cultivate relationships with the landscape, with nature, and then, of course, with people?
Yeah, you have to be mindful when you forage. There is no alternative. If you decide to just wantonly, brazenly walk through the woods and start grabbing stuff without paying attention to where you're walking, without paying attention to how much is there, without regard for the other animals that live in the forest that need to eat, you are going to find that you burn all your bridges very quickly. If you take everything, then nothing is there to regrow. And when you come back next year, there won't be anything. So foragers have to think ahead. They have to consider the needs of everybody in that ecosystem so that a resource isn't depleted. And more importantly, so that that resource, so that organism can thrive. So you can come back year after year. And it's not just that it replenishes itself. It's that there's more. It's more abundant. It's a stronger, more bountiful organism at that point.
Find it all between the rivers in King George County on Virginia's northern neck. Nestled between the Potomac and Rappahannock rivers, King George County is a destination that offers adventure on land and water. Hike, run, or cycle the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail, a converted railway where you'll find everything from smooth, accessible pathways to more rugged terrain. Along the Dahlgren Trail, you'll discover poetry on the trail, featuring works by Virginia poets paired with nature facts, inviting trail users to connect with the landscape. Explore Caledon State Park, known for its old-growth forest and abundance of bald eagles. Caledon offers primitive riverside camping, guided kayak programs, and wildlife viewing. King George provides multiple river access points for kayaking, fishing, boating, and more. Getting on the water is even easier with the brand new kayak rental kiosk at Wayside Park. And when the adventure winds down, you'll find waterfront dining and local breweries and wineries serving up the best of the region. Planning a weekend visit? King George has got you covered with a 48-hour weekend itinerary of unforgettable outdoor adventure. Tap on Visit King George in your show notes or dive deeper into this Virginia adventure town in episode 79, Rivers, Rail Trails, and Recreation between the Potomac and Rappahannock. Check your show notes for the link. Let's talk about foraging in Virginia by season. So it's fall right now. I'm sure people are wondering what type of species they might find in the woods in Virginia in the fall. Do you want to give us a little bit of insights?
Fall is my favorite foraging season for mushrooms. One of my absolute favorite mushrooms is this big polypore. A polypore is just like a mushroom that has a pore surface underneath. It usually grows in shelves on dead or dying wood or very near it. One of my favorite polypores is hen-of-the-woods, Gryphila frondosa. They sometimes call it the sheep's head mushroom. Common names vary depending on like region and what people usually eat in those regions. So hen-of-the-woods, it really does look like a chicken that's all fluffed out over a bunch of eggs. It's really cute, and you find it at the base of usually really old oak trees. So it's parasitic, but only mildly so, and it'll just pop up in the same spot year after year after year. I've found the same hen in the same location for like 5 years in a row, 7 years in a row, and they're really beautiful and delicious. That's a favorite. There's also the giant puffball and other types of puffballs too, which look like big big like alien volleyballs in the middle of the forest.
Oh
They're
my
white.
gosh. The first time I saw one, I thought it was a soccer ball somebody had left on the side of the trail.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I was like, why is there a soccer ball up here on this mountain? But then I was like, why do people do anything they do? And I almost walked past it. But then I went back and I was like, wait, what is this? I mean, it was enormous.
They're huge and they're actually quite good. They kind of taste, they don't taste like much, but they take on flavor really well. So you can make like puffball pizza, actually is one of the recipes in my book. And it's a recipe that I've posted online many times. You can use it as like a big pizza crust because it holds its shape really well. And it's just kind of a really good source of like protein and texture. Yeah, so that's a good one. There's also like honey mushrooms, which were actually the first mushroom that I ever found. We have multiple kinds here in Virginia. There's the ringless honey mushroom, Desarmollaria caspitosa. That is one of my favorites. And honey mushrooms also grow in big clumps on the ground, but they have gills underneath, which look like a little fan as opposed to pores on your skin. They are heavily parasitic, so you'll find them in forests. If you look for a lot of dead trees and you come back in the fall, that's where you're going to find a lot of honey mushrooms. They will kill trees, and they're actually very ecologically important. We need things to die in order to like create good soil and to make way for new growth. But honey mushrooms are also really delicious. So they're not as beginner friendly. You do need to kind of know what you're looking for, but they are one of my favorite fall mushrooms. They are so good.
I'm hoping to find some this year because I have not yet foraged honey mushrooms, but I see other people finding them right now. So this must be the right time because there's photos all over the socials of people finding honey mushrooms. So
when it's like comfortable to be outside again, you know, when the summer weather has really kind of gone away for good, that's when I start finding them. Yeah. One good ID tip is that the stems are really fibrous. When you pull them apart, they kind of like hold together, almost like string cheese.
Yes.
But then the bottom of the stem, if you pull it out, is going to be a little bit pointed and it's usually black. The other cool thing about honey mushrooms is that they have bioluminescent mycelium.
I did not know that. Tell
so
me what
cool.
that means.
So bioluminescence is like a natural luminescence. So if you go out in the woods at night and you see something that's kind of glowing, that's bioluminescent. So you might have seen like the bioluminescent reefs that have like the bioluminescent little critters that are swimming around in them. And it's that kind of like bluish glow. So we actually have a number of bioluminescent fungi that you can find in the forests in Virginia. And so the mycelium, so the underground structure of honey mushrooms is bioluminescent. So it glows almost like an acidic yellow color.
So this is really cool because I'm thinking, like, as you're telling me this, I'm thinking back to a backpacking trip I did many years ago with a small group of friends. It was in September, so it was around this time of year. And we were all sitting around at night, like after we put up our tents and it was dark out, and there was something glowing and all of us saw it. But it was like the kind of thing that you don't want to say anything because you're like, oh, it's just trash, or it's just like just my eyes, or I'm imagining it, or whatever. All of us saw it. It took forever before somebody was finally like, is there something glowing over there? And then all of us were like, yeah, what is that? And we all walked over and turned on our flashlights, and it was mushrooms, and none of us could believe it. It was really cool.
Were they like little mushrooms growing on dead wood?
So, I'm going to go back and check my photos, and I hope I took a picture of it. This was like 10 years ago, Gabrielle. So I could not tell you what they looked like, but I hope I have pictures of it.
Because I'm willing to bet real money based on the fact that it was September and that you were able to see it, that it was probably a mushroom called Pinellus stypticus, which is sometimes called the bitter oysterling. And they almost look like tiny little oyster mushrooms. They're a little fuzzy on top, and they glow so bright in the dark. If you get the conditions right, if it's like rained enough recently and they're young enough and it's dark enough outside, I have been some places where you could like hold some up and you could light your way home if you needed to. Yeah.
You're kidding. That's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Gosh, now I really do hope that I'm going to be so disappointed if I don't have pictures. Like, I need to know this now. As you're talking about some of these other species, do you ever have the experience where you like find something and you don't know what it is, so you leave it, and then you realize later later on what it was, and you kick yourself. Like that huge puffball that I found that I thought was a soccer ball on the side of the trail. There were 3 of them, and I left them there because I had no idea what they were. And I went back every year for a couple of years after that looking for it, and I never found it again. And I've never found giant puffballs since then. And now I'm just like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I left it there.
I think that I've had experiences that are similar to that, especially like early on in my foraging journey. Now at this point, there are times where I can't key something out in the forest. I don't have the right information with me, or maybe I've found something that just hasn't been described, and then I figure it out later. But I think now, if I couldn't identify it in the forest, I probably shouldn't have brought it back with me to eat in the first place.
Yes.
So I usually recommend that beginners, and really everybody, because everybody is susceptible to goofing up. We are humans who very often succumb to Dunning-Kruger, believing that the little bit of information that we have covers more than it really does. I will tell beginners, the most dangerous position to be in is not knowing nothing, it's knowing 10 things, because you're going to think that everything that you see outside is one of those 10 things that you know, instead of assuming that it's information you don't have. With beginners and everybody else, I usually encourage people to try to identify something positively 3 times before you eat it. My friend Sam Thayer calls it banana confidence. Being as confident of the thing that you're foraging as you would be like identifying a banana. We all know what bananas look like, right? And there's like a little variation. You might get a little confused between like a banana and a plantain, for example. But like we know, and we can kind of see the differences. And if you're not confident enough to be able to say, yes, like I know this intimately, I know exactly what this is, or I can positively identify it, you probably shouldn't be eating it.
I believe that that's true, because now when I see something, I know for certain that it is what I think it is. And if I'm not sure, I don't take it, because it's just not worth the risk.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll take lots of pictures and then I'll post them in groups and say, hey, I think this might be this, but I'm not sure. What do you all think? And then start to get some feedback. And then, of course, check my field guides. But otherwise, I just leave it where it is. Because the other thing I think is, what if I take it and it's not something that's edible? Then I've just taken it from the forest for no reason. Now it's got to be tossed out.
Yeah. And it is important to handle the things that you find, right? Like you can touch any mushroom you want, and touching and smelling and observing mushrooms is really important. Sometimes I think that in modern society, we kind of expect immediacy with everything. So we expect to be able to snap a picture and know what something is, upload it to, some kind of an AI that's going to do all the work for us. But identification is work. You have to actually sit down and do it. And you have to look at things pretty objectively. I can't tell you the number of times that I have found something and hoped desperately that it was, the mushroom or the berry that I was looking for. Actually, just the other day, I was checking out this tree that looked really unfamiliar to me. And it had all of these gorgeous orange berries on it. And I was like, this could be sea buckthorn, but I don't know if it is. I hope it's sea buckthorn, but I'm not going to just pick a bunch and then try to figure it out. Instead, I looked up all of the identifying features, and it was not sea buckthorn. It was a firebush, but they look similar enough from a distance that I got really excited. But if I hadn't taken that time and had instead just gone oh, it's an orange berry growing on a bush, it's got to be this. It's got to be this. I would have definitely ended up with an upset stomach.
Luckily, that's all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
Something worse.
Yeah. So no matter where you are, you have to take the time. You can't just rely on your gut, because your gut will lie to you. Your gut really just wants snacks. I know mine does. And you can't trust it.
Hey, adventure seekers! Can you believe I traveled 10,043 miles across Virginia last year? Yep, over 10,000 miles in search of the best trails, parks, and base camps to help you plan your next adventure. If you've enjoyed discovering these hidden gems and want to hear more, consider supporting the podcast through my Buy Me a Coffee page. Your contribution, whether it's a one-time tip or a monthly membership, helps cover the cost of creating these episodes and keeps the adventure going. Every bit helps fuel the journey. Plus, members get some awesome perks. So head to my Buy Me a Coffee page by clicking on Support the Show in your show notes. Shout out to the newest members of Virginia Outdoor Adventures. Kevin is our newest Trailblazer member. Jim, Tamara, Allison, and Carrie are all Wild Wanderer members. And Raphael is a Summit Seeker member. Thanks for helping me share Virginia's wildest, most inspiring places, one adventure at a time. Any other species for fall, or should we move on to winter?
Another one that's, I think, really an easy ID for fall is the lion's mane mushroom. And this one also bleeds into winter. So lion's mane mushrooms also represent a different sort of morphology or like mushroom shape. And they have what are called teeth. So they're these really long tubes that kind of look like the mane of a lion. So they're these white, sometimes yellowish mushrooms that grow on trees. I often find them on silver maple, but you can find them on other types of trees as well. And because they like to taunt us, they like to grow really high up in trees. You'll sometimes find them on fallen logs too. But they are really delicious. They kind of taste like crab.
Yes.
And you can cook them like crab. So I've made like crab cakes. I've made crab rangoon with them, and they're absolutely delicious. So they are probably starting to come out right about now. And they're pretty easy to identify. There aren't really a lot of things that look exactly like them. There are other species that are in that genus, that like little family of mushrooms, but those are all edible too. So that's a really good one to know.
Lion's mane is like the mushroom that I'm always looking for that I never find. Like I found it one year accidentally and it was a huge, like, I mean, it was enormous. I don't think I've ever seen one that big. And there were multiple like on one tree. And so I was so excited. I was pulling out the knife and the bag and I'm like super stoked. And my friend is looking at me like, what in the world is wrong with you? And I have never found anything like that again. Like I've maybe find really small ones, or I found a halfway decent sized one when I was hiking in Ohio and staying in a hotel and there was nothing I could do with it. So I left it there. What do we call it in birding when there's a bird that you really, really want to see, but it always evades you? Nemesis bird. Like they call it, they call it like your nemesis bird. And so I feel like lion's mane is my nemesis mushroom if there is such a thing. That's
incredible. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, it's true though. And they grow in places where you're not necessarily always looking. So like most of the ones that I find are really high up in trees.
Yes. And then I had a friend who found one in a neighbor's yard really high up and she had to get a ladder, but she knew she needed to ask permission. So she knocked on the door. She could tell somebody was home. Nobody answered. She left a note. That person called her back and asked her what it was worth. They wanted to charge her like $100 to be able to come back with the ladder and go up and get the mushroom out of the tree.
Oh my gosh. That's not cool. Although you should always ask permission if you want to collect something from anybody's property.
That's exactly right. Okay. So we need to move on. Let's talk about winter. I mean, are there mushrooms in winter? Like, what can you really find when it's cold out?
There are mushrooms in winter. Mushroom season never really ends. There's always something to find. So a lot of the mushrooms that grow in winter are going to be things like woodier mushrooms, which are these kind of like jelly. They literally look like ears. The genus is Auricularia. And there are these kind of brown. Sometimes you find them and they're like a little crispy, but you can find them and they're kind of gelatinous. And those are actually really popular in a lot of Asian cuisine. So you'll find them in soups. Sometimes they're just called ear fungus, which is such a like gross
Yeah.
term when you think
Ew.
about it. It's just like a translation issue, I think. But you'll often find them in soups and stews and like a lot of Chinese recipes. So that's often how I'll use them. You can also make candy with them. So you can like boil them in sugar water or juice with added sugar, and then like dry them out. And then if you roll them in a little bit of malic acid, then you can make sour ear gummies, which is just like fun and weird.
I definitely need to get your recipe for wood ear candy because I keep finding wood ear, and I'm sure people have seen it all the time and they just don't even know what it is because it'll be like on a stick on the ground on the trail when you walk over
Yeah.
it. I have tried different things, and every single time my husband's like, I'm not eating snot booger mushrooms because that's what he like the texture of it. He can't get over it. And everything I try, I think it's fine, but he can't deal with it. And he's always complaining. So if I made candy out of it, I will bet he eats it.
You can get a lot of people to eat things that they would never eat if you say, "Here, this is candy." And I feel like this is going to work. You're going to have to report back and tell me.
Yes.
But I feel like this is how you get him.
I think that's right. Okay, what else can we find in winter?
So another one of my favorite mushrooms is a mushroom called the bluet. It has like three scientific names. It's either Colibia nuda, Clitosabe nuda, or Lepista nuda. But it is this gorgeous purple mushroom. You have to be kind of careful with purple mushrooms because some of them are going to be in the genus Cortinarius, and some of those purple Cortinarius can be sickeners. Those are going to have rusty red spores. So you're going to be able to see like along the stem, usually they'll have kind of a little rusty looking stain. So stay away from those. But the wood bluet has almost like a lilac purple color everywhere. And they kind of smell a little bit like freezer burned orange juice, but they taste so good when you cook them. Usually I can smell them before I can see them, and they'll grow in leaf litter and in pine duff. So you kind of have to like keep an eye out for little like lumps in the forest because sometimes they're underneath. But when you find them, you usually find a lot, and they taste so good. And I've found them all the way into January here.
Yeah, I'm going to be crawling around looking for some things now. I see like your videos online and you're down on the ground and you're like, yeah, look for these bumps. And then you lift some leaves and there they are. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I have to try that.
Yeah, this is why I love taking kids on forays. They always find things because they're low to the ground, so they see more.
That makes sense. Yeah. Anything else in the winter?
Oyster mushrooms are another thing that is really popular in winter. I find them all the way through winter. I have found oyster mushrooms like in winter, in February in Michigan, frozen. They are delicious. They're very easy to identify. So they grow in these shelves. So you'll see them kind of in a big clump. And they have this really interesting gill structure that helps you to identify them. So the top of the mushroom, it'll usually be like kind of a pearlish color, almost bluish sometimes. Very like gray or white. And then you look underneath and you've got all of these stems kind of coming to the same point. And the gills travel all the way down the stem. It's a feature that we call decurrent. So when you hear that something that the gills are decurrent, it means that they're traveling all the way down the stem too, all the way to the point of attachment. And they are so just easy to use. So if you're not a meat eater or you want to eat less meat, oyster mushrooms are one of the best things that you can sub in for meat. I'm not usually somebody who's like batter and fry it, but honestly, batter and fry some oyster mushrooms and then serve it with like a little bit of like an aioli or something. So good. Just like light and lovely. One of the best like chicken sandwiches I've ever had in my life was made from fried oyster mushrooms. It was so good. The texture is incredible.
Yeah, I do enjoy the texture, and I make a mean mushroom barley soup out of oyster mushrooms. And like I'm a big fan of soup in winter, and this just sort of beefs it up because like you said, it has the texture of meat. It's, you know, it's hearty. And so you feel like between the mushroom and the barley that you're getting a lot out of that soup, and it's so good for you.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. And our oysters usually pretty prolific because I feel like when I find them, I'm not finding a little bit, I'm finding so many.
Yeah. So oysters are going to grow on dead wood or dying wood, and they're usually going to grow in big flushes, just like big clusters.
Yeah, like I've seen a large tree fallen over and it'll be covered in oyster mushrooms, like way more than I could possibly carry out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Almost anytime I find oyster mushrooms, I end up like calling friends and being like, "So how many can you keep in your fridge?" Like I have so many friends who now know that like when they get a call from me, the first thing out of my mouth is going to be, "What's the fridge situation right now?"
Because you need space. I could completely understand that, especially with oysters. Like, I think of all of the mushrooms that I have stored right now, I think I have more oyster mushrooms than anything else. Like, I dehydrate them and then
Yeah.
I stick them in jars or containers. I've had some going back a couple of years because
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's, you get so many of them that you're like, it's to the point now where when I find oysters, I just leave them alone because I'm like, I don't have space for any more.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about spring and summer because I think also a lot of people are outside in these seasons and they want to know what they can find then.
Absolutely. So in spring, we've got our morels. That's going to be the most popular spring fungus. They're really delicious. They only appear for a few weeks. You definitely get a lot of people out in the woods. They are hard to spot. They are very picky about where they like to grow. You really do have to go and look hard for them. So it is a lot of fun. If you want to go hunting for morels and you don't want as much of the frustration of looking for morels, I would definitely recommend joining one of the morel hikes that's put on by the mycological society. So you can go mushroom hunting with people who like know mushrooms and are going to be able to like demonstrate where to find them and what.
Quick reminder, want to win a mushroom foraging knife? All you have to do is share this episode on social media and tag Virginia Outdoor Adventures. One lucky listener will win the perfect tool for your next wild food adventure. Don't forget, tap the share button in your listening app now.
To look for. In the spring, I also collect a lot of pheasantback mushrooms, Serioporus squamosus, and they're pretty easy to ID. They have this like pheasant feather looking top. Sometimes they're also called dryad saddle, and they kind of smell like watermelon rind, but they're really good if you shred them up and use them like chicken breast. And then moving on to summer, we've got chanterelles galore. We have so many different kinds of chanterelles that grow in Virginia, and they grow for ages.
Yeah.
Last year, I was finding chanterelles into November. So I started finding them in late May, and I didn't stop finding them until like mid-November. So
That's
they were just
impressive.
going on forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
This summer was a great chanterelle year. My freeze dryer and dehydrator, just everything was going nuts all the time, no breaks. And then we've also got like chicken of the woods, which you and I actually found
We
when we
sure
were out in
did.
the woods.
Quite a few very nice ones.
Yeah, so there are a couple of different varieties that grow here in Virginia. We have the white poured chicken of the woods. So on top, it kind of looks like a traffic cone. It's like darker towards the base, and then it gets lighter towards the edges. And then underneath, it's either going to be this crazy sulfur yellow color, or it's going to be almost like a cream, very pale color. And this is another polypore, so kind of like our hen of the woods. You're going to find it growing on dead or dying wood. Sometimes it grows in these big shelves. Sometimes it grows in like almost a rosette, but they're also easy to identify and they're quite good. They really have more the texture of chicken than the flavor, but chicken tastes like everything, right? Like
Yeah,
everything tastes
that's
like
right.
chicken.
Yep.
So yeah, I use chicken of the woods in a lot of different things, and you can find it in great quantity, just like oyster mushrooms.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is the other mushroom that I have so much of. I don't know what to do with it all. There's like bags and bags of it in my deep freezer. And I think I was telling you when we were when we were cutting the chicken of the woods that we found when we were together, I was like, my husband's gonna kill me because he's to the point where he's like, do not bring home any more of this. He got to the point where he was so sick of eating chicken in the woods I was making it in different recipes, so I was switching it up constantly. We weren't having the exact same thing every single time. But he was like, I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm like, but it's so good. And also I think that's the difference between like going out and finding it yourself and like just, being handed something or having something put down in front of you, or even just going to the store and buying something. You don't get the same excitement and joy out of it as you do when you have found it yourself.
I very much feel that way. Like foraging really connects you to your food in a completely different way. You feel more responsible for it. You're going to take better care of it. You're not going to just like let it rot in your fridge because it was hard work to acquire it. So you have to do something with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, chanterelles are completely different. Those are like gold on the forest floor. And when I bring them home, I always saute them with the intention of using them in some sort of a recipe, but never fails. My husband comes in and he starts picking them out of the pan and popping them in his mouth. And then I get panicked that he's going to eat them all and I won't get any. So then I start doing the same. And next thing you know, the whole thing is gone.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I did really well on chanterelles this year, but most years, they're not getting preserved. They're getting annihilated.
That's right.
They're gone.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that there are walks that people can go on. I definitely need to join one of those morel walks because in all the years that I've been looking, I have never once found one. And I was joking with you that I'm to the point where I don't even want to pick them. I just want to take a picture of it and take a selfie next to one and be like, I found one. But let's maybe shift a little bit into what some of the resources are for beginners, like local clubs, workshops, communities. Like, how would you recommend learning more?
If you go to the NAMA website, North American Mycological Association, NAMA.org, you can find the closest mushroom club or mycological society to your area. So you can search by state. Here in Virginia, I think we have two clubs, but our club where I live is the Blue Ridge Mycological Club, Brumsey, which is run by Pat Mitchell, who's a great mycologist. And it is so valuable to get to go on walks with people who have spent a large portion of their life dedicated to mushrooms, because mushroom people love to teach. We love to gab. So we will teach you like what we are seeing. So you can come along and you can hang out with us and we will spend time with you. If you want to do something that's more like a one-off, shameless plug, I lead walks. You can find those online. I don't have any scheduled for the moment, but it's common. And there are other people in town who lead walks too. So that's like the best thing you can do is to get out in the woods with somebody and get that hands-on learning. But then there are also other resources where you can do more independent learning. There are some really great websites. There are Facebook groups. You can join like your state's Facebook mushroom group and you'll learn a ton because people will post what they find and you'll get to like learn by osmosis. That's honestly how I did a lot of my learning at first. There are some great websites like mushroomexpert.com. The guy who writes it is really funny and you'll be able to learn a lot of the characteristics of different mushrooms. And if somebody gives you an ID on one of those groups, you can look it up and you can learn more about that mushroom and what led them to that ID. There are also books. This is really weird to say, but these days you actually do have to be careful of some books because if you just go on Amazon and you buy whatever book shows up first, there's a chance that it could be AI generated. So try to find a book that is for your area, that is written by a person that you can Google, that talks about species that you can find. So one of the books that I really like is written by Appalachian Forager, and it is a really great resource for edible mushrooms in this area. There's also Southeastern Mushrooms, which is another really fantastic book. There are some great books for this area. Because it is so diverse, people want to study the mushrooms here. They want to learn more and share that information.
Are there any other tools that people need to get started?
The nice thing about foraging is like human beings are equipped with most of the tools that they need to do it just on their own bodies. But I do recommend getting a knife. So I used to forage with like literally a paring knife from my kitchen and a trash bag because I was poor. And Nowadays, I use a mushroom knife, which I'm a big fan of. They have kind of curved blades, so they're nice for carving away dirt and debris. And then there's a brush on the other end so that you can brush things away and you can excavate or evict unwanted critters who might be hiding inside your mushrooms. And then baskets or bags. So try to get something that has like an open weave so that spores, which are kind of like mushroom seeds that are inside of your mushrooms, can still fall out and you can kind of replant mushrooms as you are walking. I'm personally more of a basket fan than a bag fan because I don't like crushing my mushrooms, but use what you got.
Yeah, I learned
Yeah.
from you that baskets are really nice. I don't have a basket though when I'm usually out. And that's because I'm usually doing something simultaneously. I'm simultaneously hiking and birding and identifying plants and looking for mushrooms. Like I'm doing all the things at one
Totally.
time, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I have like those nice cloth, I guess they're supposed to be like farmers market bags or like grocery store bags, but they're cloth and they fold up into a little pouch and I toss them in my pack so that if I find something, I've always got a bag that's in my
Totally.
pack.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I've sort of switched from using a backpack to using a basket for everything. So I feel sort of like a forest Jane Birkin, because she used to carry around a basket because she couldn't fit all of her stuff in a handbag. And then was it Hermes? I don't know anything about fashion, but he like made her this special bag, the Birkin bag, and she was just like, I still like my basket though. And that's how I feel because honestly, there is no purse that could hold everything I need. Like, give me a big old market basket. And then no matter what I'm out there looking for, it's gonna be fine.
Yes. And the mushroom knife, Gabrielle, I am telling you, you changed my life.
Oh, I'm so glad.
The moment you handed that knife to me and said, use this, I was like, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? I mean, I've been using just a regular pocket knife and it's not the same. Plus yours had a brush on the end of it, which was so smart because you said, why wait till you get home to clean them and have to do all the work and then the messes in your kitchen? You can do it right here in the field. And oh my God, like I came home with perfectly cleaned, trimmed, like ready to go chicken of the woods. I didn't have to do the extra work in my kitchen. And sometimes the extra work is that little thing that makes you decide, I don't have time for this now, or I'm not going to do this now.
Totally. And it's more sustainable to do it out in the woods because when you're like trimming everything in your kitchen, what are you going to do? You're just going to like maybe throw it in your compost. Maybe it goes in the trash. Maybe it goes down the sink. And if you're doing it out in the woods, like I always kind of feel bad for the mushrooms, like the bugs that I evict from my mushrooms, because
Yes.
I'm like kind of taking your food here. Sorry. But if I'm leaving all the trimmings, then I can also leave the bugs in the trimmings. So it's like, hey, consolation prize, you still get your snacks. I'm just going to take this part.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially if when you get home and you open the bag and there's bugs in the bottom of the bag.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
then
I'm a big
like
fan
I
of like
carry
clean
I carry them
basket.
outside but and put them back outside, but I don't know if I'm releasing them into a place that they're going to be able to survive. I just,
Yeah, the thing is like if you put mushrooms into your basket dirty, they're going to get everything in your basket dirty.
Yeah.
And that dirt is going to get like embedded in your mushrooms. So I don't put things in my basket unless they're clean,
Yeah.
trimmed, ready to go.
Totally. It's the first thing I did when I got home after we were together that day is buy one online and it showed up the next day and I was dancing around my living room. Like that's how
Incredible.
excited I was
I'm
about it.
so glad. Like, if I could change anybody's life in one small way, I'm gonna ride that high for a while.
Yes, and they're not super expensive and they're
They're
small.
not.
You throw them in your pack. Like I just don't know why I didn't have one all along. So if I had any advice, you're the expert here, but if I had any advice, I'd be like get yourself a mushroom knife.
If you wanna forage mushrooms, it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is like when it comes to buying stuff, try not to buy things until you know that you're gonna actually use them. So
Right.
a lot of people will get into foraging and they'll just be like, oh my gosh, and now I want to buy like 6 beautiful baskets and I want to get this whole knife set and I want to get a hori hori and I want to get trimmers and pruners and all of this stuff. And you're like, whoa, maybe we should like just see what we already have, see what we can make work. Like, if you know that you're not going to be really into making like juices from your berries. Maybe you don't need a steam juicer. Maybe like you just need the things to do the stuff that you know you're going to be into, and then you can add on over time. If you're not going to be gathering a ton of things, maybe you don't need a dehydrator right off the bat. Maybe you can just use the dashboard of your car for a while until you go, you know what, a dehydrator would be a good purchase for me.
That makes total sense. I say the same thing about outdoor gear all the time because people go down those rabbit holes real quick and it's just not necessary. Like, acquire the things that you really think you're going to use and invest in those one piece at a time, not going crazy from the beginning.
Invest in tools that are going to make your job easier, but you have to know what that job is first. You have to know, like, what are the things that I am spending a lot of time on? One thing that I would definitely recommend if you're going to be foraging a lot of mushrooms is a salad spinner. They are so useful for cleaning mushrooms.
Yes,
so
you put that in your
useful.
book. I mean, you have a whole list of things in your book that you recommend for different projects, different recipes, different whatever you're planning to do. But the salad spinner one, you said to me when we were together, do you know the salad spinner trick?
It's life-changing, especially for morels, because they get so dirty. No matter what you do, you're gonna find grit every time. And the salad spinner just dislodges the grit so well. I'm a huge fan.
Join us next week when Gabrielle tells us how to identify mushrooms, shares safety tips, covers where to forage, and gives us a sneak peek into her new book, complete with some of her favorite recipes. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is inspired by and supported by listeners like you, which is why your messages and feedback mean so much to me. You can text me directly by clicking on Send Jessica a Text Message in your show notes. I answer questions, respond to comments, and share your feedback on the show. Never miss a new episode. Sign up for my email newsletter and receive my listener resource guide with the top podcast episodes, a Virginia Outdoor bucket list, and exclusive brand discounts for my listeners. Click on newsletter sign up in your show notes or visit virginiaoutdooradventures.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adventure on.